Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel, The Medieval Reader. For today's Wisdom Wednesday, I would like to discuss a topic in a book I finished right before Booktubeathon, and that's Jayber Crow by Wendell Berry. Jayber Crow is the autobiography of a barber who's living in the fictional town of Port William, Kentucky. Jayber Crow is a hard book to spoil because it's literary fiction. Still, what I will be discussing today, which is warfare, is only one of many themes explored in this book. I guess I'm trying to kill two birds with one stone in these Wisdom Wednesdays. I'm trying to first talk about wisdom that I have encountered in the books I'm reading and talk about what that means for me as a reader and as a human being. And second, to introduce you to works that I've actually enjoyed. I find that while reviews really do inspire me to pick up a book, sometimes talking about the themes in the book actually encouraged me even more to try the book. So hopefully I'm able to do both at the same time with these Wisdom Wednesdays. So I'm going to do that today with Jayber Crow. And in one of the chapters, Jayber Crow considers the effect of involuntary conscription, so the draft, on Port William. He lives through World War II, the Korean and Vietnam Wars, and he considers how that affected the people living in this town. In particular, one of the fathers lost his son in the Vietnam War, and yet he was hugely in support of the war and would denounce Vietnam War protesters as communists. And I'd never really thought about warfare really before. I have only a little bit, only very briefly, and I certainly never really thought about the draft. I don't come from a military family. I know some people who are in the ROTC at my university. I know some friends who are part of the military, but I've never had any kind of intimate experience with the military. This chapter in Jayber Crow really got me thinking about the effect of the draft on creating nationalistic fervor. Wars are officially fought for a number of reasons. And today, I think about the Iraq War, people voluntarily join the military. But especially when that wasn't the case, so say during World War II or during the Vietnam War, there would be a number of people who'd be drafted who may not even support the war, and yet they don't really have an option but to be a part of this. What ends up happening is that the family and friends of those fighting in the war will, of course, support the war as well because their loved ones are in the war and they want to make sure that they support the cause that their loved ones are fighting for. And the draft actually creates this illusion of support, not just because, you have all these people who are now forced to fight for a war that they may or may not support or may not have wanted to fight for, but also those who do not fight, say because they're not healthy enough to fight, or they're women, that they feel like they have to be a part of the cause because their friends are a part of this. In the case of Jayber Crow, we see this. He is a self-professed pacifist, but even though he is a pacifist and never really wanted to be drafted, when he sees all of his friends are drafted, and then he is told that he's not fit to fight, he feels guilty. He feels like a coward. He feels like it's not fair that he doesn't have to fight and his friends have to. So somebody who otherwise would be opposed to warfare suddenly supports it because he wants to be in solidarity with everybody else in his town. Perhaps that is why the protesters of the Iraq War did not face the same kind of anger and hatred that protesters of, say, the Vietnam War did. Because when you have a draft, you have the entire nation behind a war, and that creates this nationalism that just doesn't exist in the same way when soldiers are fighting voluntarily in a war. And then I finally was thinking about all of those who had to fight on the German side of the war during World War II. How many hundreds of people did not support the Nazi Party, did not support Hitler, but had to fight in a war for a leader they didn't support. And then how does that affect the family? Doesn't the family then end up supporting the war just because their loved ones are fighting? Perhaps. And so I think that that's really an interesting aspect of the draft, that it creates this fervor that you just don't get when there isn't a draft. Jayber Crow's observations in the small town of Port William brought to my attention for the very first time the connection between the draft and nationalism. And the draft does more than just recruit soldiers. When there is a draft, it's in the entire nation's best interest to support the war. I found this particular chapter in Jayber Crow to be really interesting, and a great reminder that wars are fought by people who have families, and all the small towns that are broken apart because of wars, but also how they come together because of wars. I couldn't more highly recommend Jayber Crow by Wendell Berry if you're an American in particular. Let me know what your thoughts are. I'm aware that this is a very controversial Wisdom Wednesday, but then such is life. Isn't all of life controversial? I'm aware that it is, but I'm really interested in hearing your thoughts. And these are my thoughts about something that I've really never considered before. Let me know what you think. And I hope you guys all have a great day. Bye now.